Hello, welcome to this lecture for the Chrysalis Professional Diploma in Psychotherapeutic Counselling Practice. Today we are looking at Module 10 from Component 6, which is related to personal and professional development. So I'm just going to bring up some slides for us and then we shall make a start on our lecture for today. Okay, there we are. Let's just move myself up a little bit on the screen so that you'll be able to see all of the slides there. So, Module 10 is one of the 4 modules towards the end of the course that is much more concerned with your own personal and professional development in relation to how you are reflecting on your own processes, your own thoughts, feelings, behaviours, memories. And we know why we're doing this, of course. It's because the therapeutic relationship, very important aspect of therapy, and the therapeutic relationship is to a very large extent going to be shaped and coloured by what you bring into the room, what your beliefs and attitudes and awarenesses and self-awarenesses are. So this module is like Module 9, also in a workbook format for you. So that when you bring your class notes to class, there will be certain boxes for you to reflect on, for you to move through that workbook with your tutor. So the standards to be met for this component by this particular module, it's just one standard, it's standard 2. Which is to understand the use of continuing professional development for counsellors. And to meet the standard, you need to be summarising your understanding of continuing professional development, considering whether you would intend to specialise in your therapy work, and if so, what you would like to specialise in, and to research continuing professional development opportunities, both in your chosen specialism and, of course, broader than that, and briefly summarise your findings. So, let's move forward with this. So what we need to do as we are moving through this module is we need to look at this module from the stance of ourselves rather than our clients. Okay, so previously we may have been looking over the past couple of years a lot about why clients might do what they do, how clients might feel, how clients might be thinking, and so on. But here we're putting the focus back on us. Okay, so keep the focus there as we are working through these slides here. So we're starting off today with a very broad look at existential therapy and what this actually means. Okay, so understanding ourselves and our motivations is a key aspect of relational work with a client, because our personal reflective work is for outside the therapy room, which essentially means that what we're doing here is we are reflecting on aspects of ourselves so that we are clear about what is our stuff and what is the client's stuff when we're actually inside the therapy room. So we might also propose that becoming a therapist is perhaps part of our own personal pathway. So rather than saying, well, I'm becoming a therapist and now I'm self-reflecting, so it might be the part of our journey, part of our own self-reflective process, part of our moving towards self-actualization is actually becoming a therapist. So that's an interesting way of looking at something, isn't it? Now, existential approaches, which are specific approaches within therapy, would propose that actually there is no inherent meaning in life. Okay, so what that means is that people are meaning giving rather than meaning getting. So we want to discover, we want to define, we want to decide what the meaning of life is. Okay. And we need to perhaps discover and to decide what is the meaning of our own life. So, we can choose this for ourselves. And, we know that it doesn't take us long kind of looking around the world and looking at different groups and working with different individuals, for example, to recognize that, yes, indeed, we do this, and we do this in a variety of ways. We choose what life means for us. So we choose our own being. And the choices we make about being are relevant to every instance in our lives. Okay. So this might be connected to what we decide our purpose is, might be connected to how we decide our life will be, and it might be connected to what kind of person we believe we are or what kind of person we would like to be. So this final point here, since I am, I have a right to be, is a quote from John McLeod's book, where he mentions that a client said this to him: since I am, I have a right to be. Okay, so at some point, perhaps for us all, at some point the meaning of existence becomes important. Now, this might be what leads people to seek counselling. Okay, so we have to recognise that when we are finding meaning in counselling, finding meaning in the therapeutic relationship, that the therapeutic relationship might mean that actually we need to travel where the client is prepared to go. And of course, in order to stay present with the client, we need to be able to travel that journey as well. Not necessarily taking the same journey, but at least standing side by side with them. So often clients can come to therapy who want to discover more about their purpose, more about what life means for them. Okay, it may be that clients are coming to therapy because they feel that life doesn't have meaning for them, or that they've lost meaning. So, and this can have a profound effect on people's emotions. So, many people, past and present, find meaning in religion. Okay, but today we can find that more and more perhaps we are questioning the religion or beliefs we're brought up with and expanding our horizons into our own personal belief system. It is a fact, isn't it, that in our modern world today, with the internet and so on, we have great opportunities to explore different systems and to measure those different systems against the ones that we were brought up with. We can expand our horizons. Sometimes we question the meaning of life, or more poignantly, what life actually means to us. We might question, as we're thinking about this, what led us to this course in the first place? And one of the exercises that you may well be doing in this module today is connected to, well, yes, what is my purpose in becoming a therapist? And part of this may be us recognizing that in helping others, we are often also helping ourselves. It feels right, it feels good. It sort of, it increases those comfortable emotions, it gives us purpose, it gives us status, it gives us a place within our community. So in helping others, we're often helping ourselves. So specifically, one of the models that we're looking at in this course is the model that we're looking at today, and this is psychosynthesis. Now, psychosynthesis is the approach of Roberto Aggioli, okay? And Roberto Aggioli was an original student of Freud and broke away from his school after feeling that the Freudian view of the unconscious was too limited. Now, psychosynthesis is an interesting approach because many of us would say that actually it fits much more with the humanistic approach than it does with the psychodynamic approach, but the model that psychosynthesis uses of the human mind is actually perhaps much closer to the psychoanalytical, indeed the psychodynamic approaches generally, than perhaps the humanistic approach. So there's a lot of crossovers here, okay. Now, we are not presenting to you psychosynthesis today as another model to learn to use with clients to bring into therapy to integrate with your pluralistic approach necessarily. We're looking at this approach today from your perspective, because quite a lot of people who are using this psychosynthesis approach are actually trained counsellors or psychotherapists, or those in the helping professions specifically, who want to go that step further in our understanding of ourselves. And psychosynthesis as a model does allow us to do this, because there is both a clear structure to it, and there is a lot of flexibility as to the methods that it uses. So psychosynthesis proposes that our unconscious is a dynamic portrayal of a constant interplay and conflict between many different and contrasting forces, with a unifying centre. And this unifying centre ever tends to control, harmonise, and use these different contrasting forces. Okay, so we can see some similarities here already, perhaps, with Freud's approach, or indeed Jung's approach. Okay, so a constant interplay and conflict between many different and contrasting forces. Perhaps we could say that that is a stage further than Freud's concept of id, ego, superego, and and this unifying center that tends to control, harmonize, and use these different forces, which sounds a little bit like Freud's model of the ego, doesn't it? So, however, as we will learn in a moment, psychosynthesis proposes this model in a different way, okay? And there are some really clear differences and distinctions that we need to look at. So psychosynthesis is used in therapy, but it is also used in education, in medicine, in business coaching, and it is deeply concerned with individual development. It's a transpersonal psychology. Now that's important. And, in a sense, we haven't looked in any great detail at any of the transpersonal psychologies. So transpersonal means that it includes the spiritual dimension to human beings. Okay. Now the spiritual dimension is related to what Assagioli terms the self, the higher self. Okay. So there's two aspects of the self there. The spiritual dimension, we may at this point be asking ourselves, well, how does this fit with therapy exactly? So, well, let's think about that for a moment. First of all, it fits very well with therapy for clients who want to explore in a more transpersonal way. So, for clients coming into therapy, their religion or their spiritual beliefs may be very important for them. So we shouldn't be ignoring those or avoiding those in the therapy room. So, but we also need to recognize, and perhaps, psychosynthesis as a model has really helped us to recognize this. And in a sense, the humanistic approaches have as well, in terms of self-actualization, perhaps, is that, we have this dimension to us. We have this dimension to us, and we can't ignore that. Now, it's more or less developed within each individual. So some individuals would deny or just not be interested perhaps in a spiritual dimension of themselves. For others, it's a pathway that they find themselves on. And, psychotherapy generally might say, well, yeah, we do have this capacity here. Many of us believe in some kind of higher spirit, God, higher wisdom, something other than us, something that cannot be logically explained. It's there within us. So Carl Jung, for example, mentions that whether or not God exists cannot be proved. Okay, But what is clear is that we all have a tendency to want to believe in a God or want to believe in some higher force. And that's a really interesting thing to recognize. So psychosynthesis in itself as an approach can be instrumental in our own self-development as a therapist and as a person. So now psychosynthesis, like the humanistic approaches, focuses a great deal on having direct experiences. Okay. So psychosynthesis proposes that we work towards becoming who we are meant to be. And direct experiences of being are similar to the humanistic idea of self-actualization. And, you know, within that, we can look at person-centered or Gestalt, perhaps, which is very concerned with having direct experience, being in the moment, okay, being in the moment and having those key moments, those core moments, those direct experiences. So psychosynthesis proposes that there are 4 stages of attainment of this direct experience, and that there are many ways to actually attain this experience. So the approach is fluid, it's without a fixed set of methods. So there may be therapy involved, but there may also be group work. There may be encounter group work, there may be reflecting, there may be journaling, there may be, you know, completely different experiences, artistic, creative experiences, traveling experiences, and so on. So there is not a fixed set of methods here within psychosynthesis. It's fluid in that sense. To attain this experience of direct experience. So the 4 stages of attainment that psychosynthesis propose is, first of all, having a thorough knowledge of our own personality, self-awareness, insight. Now, this is what we are assisting our clients to do, yes? So understanding ourselves, understanding what we're doing, understanding how we think, understanding those automatic processes, understanding perhaps those conflicts that we have within us, our incongruence, understanding our own personality. And then the next step is actually recognizing that, okay, so now we are understanding our personality, now we have the capacity to gain control over these various elements. So that's not saying that we can, you know, we can rid ourselves of certain ways of being or so on, but it does mean that we can decide how to proceed, we can decide how to respond, how to react in a certain situation. So the next stage then is having realization of our true self. Okay, this is the center of our being. Okay. So, you know, and this stage here is about recognizing, okay, so what's going on outside of our true selves, if you like, can all be observed and gained control over, doesn't have to control us. And then the 4th stage, psychosynthesis, is the formation or reconstruction of the personality around the true central self. So this is where we begin to, if you like, think, feel, respond from the center outwards rather than the outer inwards. Okay. So this is the model of the psyche that psychosynthesis proposes. Okay. So this is Assagioli's egg diagram. I think we can probably clearly see why that is here. And we can also perhaps clearly see how, you know, a lot of this model here does fit with other psychodynamic models. So if we go through each of these stages here, yes, Assagioli agrees that we have a lower unconscious. And the lower unconscious is that part of our mind which corresponds to Freud's unconscious. So it contains and stores the fundamental drives, mainly from the id, and our repressed desires and those repressed memories and experiences and so on. It's all the deep, dark stuff under there, as well as those fundamental drives. So in the middle is the middle unconscious, and here the material is much more easily accessible to our conscious processes, and this would be similar to Freud's preconscious. Okay. So note then that we have this extra part here, the first of the extra parts, which Assagioli calls the higher unconscious. Now this is where we start to distinguish this model from other models, okay? Because the higher unconscious contains our creativity, our intuitions, our compassion, our spiritual energies. It contains those higher processes, if you like, that make us feel as if we're being uplifted, if you like. So the higher unconscious contains, again, this is still unconscious, okay, but contains those inspirations, those intuitions, those higher energies. And this is where perhaps, those transpersonal energies reside, okay, if we are truly in touch with our spirituality. So coming back into the center here, we have the field of consciousness. So the field of consciousness here, so note this is in the middle of Assagioli's diagram rather than the top in Freud's model and the iceberg model. So the field of conscious is our immediate awareness. And of course, this is changing all the time for most of us. So one moment we are conscious of a need that is to be satisfied. And, if we think in Gestalt terms for a moment, once that need is satisfied, then another need will emerge. And, our awareness will change according to where we are, what we're doing, what's around us, and what our basic needs are. So the field of consciousness is our immediate awareness. Now, in the center of this sits the conscious self, which Assagioli calls I. Now, this is the center of ourselves. So this is the center of ourselves. It's involving awareness and choice. So quite similar to the ego, but really perhaps going a stage further, because for Assagioli, this is absolutely central to the model, the conscious self. And, and this part is connected to an aspect of ourself that sits within the higher unconscious. So the higher self is the center of awareness and choice that is our larger experience of others. So this is where we connect with others. We connect with the universe, we connect with spirit, we connect with those higher energies. So this is a little bit different to Jung's concept of the collective unconscious, because the collective unconscious here is represented by point number 7, okay? So as defined by Jung, carries the archetypal experiences and communal knowledge. So, okay, so this is the diagram that Assagioli has used to explain his model. It may not be totally clear at this stage, but what we need to remember is that, a lot of these unconscious, these models that define an unconscious part of our mind, it is very difficult to explain and to understand, because we are trying to perhaps logically understand something which doesn't define itself logically at all. It's something that we feel, it's something that we are intuitive about. Okay, so a central aspect of the process, a central aspect is the process of disidentification and self-identification. So this is key to the process of psychosynthesis work. So remember that we were just talking about, really sort of, experiencing from the center of ourselves outwards rather from the outer part inwards, yeah? So Assagioli proposes that anything which we identify with is controlling us, okay? So anything with which we identify controls us. And some examples here: the person who so identifies with work that they cannot let go of it at home. The person who so identifies with being a mother that she struggles when her children leave home. The person who so identifies with having low self-esteem is creating issues and barriers for themselves. So this is important because, this is part of our inner work that we can do. So how are we identifying? Do we feel that we have a strong identity? If we do, if we have a strong identity defined by something external, then what is it that we may be denying within ourselves? So are we identifying as being a therapist, and therefore, we find it difficult then to identify in other ways, and we find that we are always being a therapist. We find it quite difficult to switch off. We find it difficult to not counsel people. We find it difficult to read something that isn't a counseling book. We find it difficult to not think like a therapist. So, this process of disidentification, Assagioli sees as really important. It's like we have to recognize that we are more than that with which we identify. Now, of course, these external identifications can be so many different things. We can strongly identify with our family. We can strongly identify with our partner. We can strongly identify with our region where we live. We can strongly identify with our ethnicity or our social group. But remember that actually, one really important aspect of counselling is that we are treating each person who comes into our counselling room as an individual, and recognising that no matter how strongly a person may be involved in work, in a group, in a locality, with a certain ethnicity, then that they may be the exception to the rule in so many other ways. So psychosynthesis proposes that what we need to do here is we need to recognize whether we are over identifying with these external factors, and to recognize that if we can disidentify from this, then we have much more control over how we are being. We can control everything from which we disidentify. It's a kind of stepping back and observing process, isn't it? And so we could, for example, say to ourselves, I have a body, but I am not my body. Now that's an interesting thing to think about, isn't it? I have a body, but I am not my body. Now we know in one sense that of course I am my body. Okay, but how interesting that I can think about my body, I can observe my body, I can feel my body, I can recognize my body, I can look at my body, and I can recognize that I am more than my body, because I know that when I am looking at my body or experiencing being in my body, I am experiencing being in my body. I have a body, but I am not my body. I have feelings and emotions, but I am not my feelings and emotions. Again, I can kind of rise above or step aside or step back from, and I can observe. I can notice I am with the feeling of frustration at the moment. I am with the feeling of joy at this moment. I am with this feeling of being cold at this moment. And if I have the capacity to identify that I'm having those feelings, then who am I? I am something other than what I am observing and experiencing here, yeah? I have thoughts, but I am not my thoughts. Now, this one is quite a clear one in CBT, for example. So CBT teaches clients to step back and observe their thoughts, to be aware of what they're thinking. It's a process called meta communication. And involves being able to think about what we're thinking. So I can think cat. I can think I am thinking about cat. I can think I am thinking about cat. I can think I'm speaking to you about thinking about cat. So I have thoughts, but I am not my thoughts. I can observe my thoughts. And you may actually have done mindfulness exercises, for example, and learned to actually observe your thoughts, almost as if you can watch them just sort of passing you by slowly or quickly, and you can observe the speed of your thoughts, you can observe whether they repeat themselves, you can observe patterns of your thoughts. So I have thoughts, but I am not my thoughts, because clearly if I can observe all of that, then I can't be my thoughts. If I am not those things, then who am I, is the question that we're asking here. And by asking ourselves, who am I, then I am moving towards a process of self-identification. I is a unique place that we can go to inside ourselves, a center of pure self-consciousness where we can reconstruct ourselves around this new center. This is what psychosynthesis is proposing for us. So firstly, we have this process of disidentification, and then this process of self-identification, and those 4 steps. So, okay, well, part of what we are observing here, when we can sort of step back and, and recognize our processes, what we're doing, our functions from this center, okay, is that we recognize that our functions of experiencing are not in themselves us, okay? So these functions here are similar to other psychodynamic models. You might recognize these from Jung's model, actually, where Jung proposed 4 functions, but as you can see, Assagioli proposes 6 functions, okay? And these functions create the changing contents of our consciousnness. They allow us to experience both ourselves and the world. So the functions are, sensation, that's one that you may recognize from Jung, okay? So that's, what we're sensing through our body, yeah? So our emotions, okay? So whether we are feeling sad, happy, angry. Thoughts, so, those thoughts that are clearly with us, I am hungry, I don't like that, these are thoughts, okay, these are thoughts. So where are we? Our intuition. So our intuition, it's like, well, this is one of Jung's as well. But actually, yeah, so, intuition is perhaps, a difficult one to define, but it's that one, well, it's like, it's a knowing. It's a knowing. So we don't know why, we can't prove, but we just know. Okay, different to feeling, okay, different to emotions, different to sensation. There's just a knowing there. Okay, so then Assagioli is adding these 2 here. Okay, so imagination, the capacity to create, yeah, the capacity to create something that is not there necessarily externally in front of us, to let our thoughts go forward into the future. And one here that is impulse stroke desire, so a real basic one, okay, a real basic one. It's like, well, yeah, something that is, is directing us, okay. So the functions, remember, are not in themselves us. They create the changing contents of our consciousness. I think this, I am aware of this, I am feeling this, I am sensing that I have this need, I think I will fulfill this need. So with the exception of Jung's 4-function model, many theorists do not see intuition as a distinct function of personality. And, you know, certainly the CBT model, and perhaps in particular the REBT model, just actually sort of focuses on thoughts and feelings as well as behaviors. Okay. So, you know, that's not there sort of, you know, not adding intuition in. And Assagioli adds these further two functions to Jung's model, imagination and desire or impulse. So now in the center here, in the center is the will. Okay, so the very center, that part marked 7 there, is the self. Okay, that's sitting in the center of us. And the will is placed in a very important position around the self. Now, the will is not a function. Okay, so the will is an energy. So now we're kind of returning a little bit to a psychodynamic concept as well. It's an energy, it's a strong notion, because the self is dynamic and the will serves as the directing energy for all of the functions. So the will is basic to mental health. So it's that act of courage, it's a clear decision, it's a perseverance to complete a task. It is the capacity to choose, to direct, and to ultimately cause. I think that we all know, you know, when we're working with clients, when the will is very strong there, because you know there is an energy in the room, there is a directiveness, there is a clear decision, there is, you know, there is a perseverance to get something completed, to do, to make that choice. Now, don't confuse this with willpower. Okay, so will is about freedom to choose and act. Will is about being from the very center of ourselves. So, you know, this is connected to our values, our feelings of self-actualization, the true self. Okay. Willpower, on the other hand, is when we're trying to force ourselves to do something or to not do something. It's like, if I try hard enough, then I won't have that cigarette, or I won't bite my nails. Okay. So, you know, will is when, you know, it's like, well, I am not a nail biter. You know, I direct my energy towards something which is important for me, that is, you know, part of my purpose. You know, part of, you know, part of my choice in how to live my life the way I want to live my life, doing the things that are important to me for the reasons that are important to me. I am being the best me that I can be. So this has a real strength to it, this particular model here. Just going back to that for a moment there, and to recognize that, so yes, indeed, we can bring aspects of this into the therapy room if we wish. But, you know, perhaps this is, for us today, you know, more relevant to our own self-awareness, to our own self-development. And you'll have the opportunity in the class to actually consider these aspects more, to do some exercises around this, to do some exercises for yourself, and to, you know, to ask yourself to really kind of feel that basic energy of the will, you know, so what it is that is driving you forward, you know, what is coming from the very center of your being, and recognizing how the different functions here are operating for you on your behalf, but they're operating for you as I, if you like, rather than having that external locus of control. This is very much a model of an internal locus of control. You are in the driving seat here. So this is an ongoing process. Okay, and you know, those stages to move through take time, and you know, and take focus as well. So, you know, for many people, you know, we can consider like self-actualization to be a lifelong process. But what a journey! Yeah, what a very interesting and valuable journey. Okay, so I'm just going to now just leave the psychosynthesis there. Okay, if you do have any specific questions about this, then there is more detail about this in your online notes. And of course, you'll be going through this in your class as well, so you can ask your tutor any questions about this that isn't absolutely clear to you. And we're just going to spend just a final few moments here looking at ethics, law, and good practice, and in particular, continuing professional development. So think professional development is, of course, connected to personal development. And, you know, I think anybody who is studying counselling and psychotherapy or therapies generally, you know, does find that the two go hand in hand. If we are really interested, if we're really fascinated in a particular subject, then, you know, we're getting something from it personally as we are professionally developing in that subject. So personal and professional development are linked and do indeed influence each other. So, but as well as the personal aspect of this, then we need to clearly remember that professional development is a requirement of your professional register. So all practitioners are expected to have and to record a minimum amount of CPD each year. So over here on the right-hand side of your screen is a section that is from the National Counselling Society website, which says that regarding continuing professional development, all practitioners undertake to maintain or improve their level of skills and professional competence in an appropriate manner commensurate with their vocations. Maintain a varied continuing professional development programme and completed to current society requirements for registrant members. Ensure that their CPD enhances their professional practice and improves the service provided to clients. It is important to keep up to date with new developments relevant to practice. And we undertake to complete CPD in accordance with current society guidance per 12-month period, keeping theoretical and practical knowledge and skills up to date by learning more about their discipline and learning more about how to work as a professional practitioner, including any new legislative requirements. And we undertake to complete CPD in a range of activities. So we can understand the importance of CPD here, that, you know, it's recognised by the professional society, by the NCS, that so that our practice is a continually developing practice. We don't want to become stale. There is always more that we can be learning. There is always movement in terms of research and evidence, laws change, so ethical guidelines change, methods of practice change, sort of, you know, current flavours of the year change, for example. And, you know, it is important for us to keep up to speed with these changes and to recognise that, you know, it's not just a case of we have taken our core course and now we never have to study anything again. Now, this is the case in so many professions, okay? So it's the case in, you know, the medical profession, the psychiatric profession, so, you know, lots of different therapies all require CPD. So now this quote, as I've said, is from the National Counselling Society, and therefore you have a responsibility as a member to keep up with your CPD. Now, while you are studying, you are not expected to conduct CPD because you are on a training course, and, you know, and you are a student in training, okay, and you are already learning a lot and studying a lot as well. But once you practice, once you are a qualified practitioner, then you will be expected to keep a log of, as it says here, a range of activities that comprise CPD to show that you are continually working on your development of your professional practice. So this is an ethical requirement of the NCS. It's also an ethical requirement of other professional registers. So if you belong to more than one professional register, then you will have to meet the ethical requirements for CPD for each of them, and they may not be the same. So do ensure that you are taking a careful look at that. And remember as well that requirements of professional registers do change, okay? And one of the things that might change is what comprises CPD and what amount of CPD you are expected to undertake each year. So it is important to have an understanding there as well, okay? And to keep up to speed with what it's saying on the website of the professional registers. So all practitioners are expected to have and record a minimum amount of CPD each year, and you may be audited by your professional register, so it is important that you do keep that record. And without CPD, we become stale in our approach, and we must keep moving, keep learning. And what comprises CPD? Lots of different things, okay? So it could be extra specialist training, for something that is a specific area that you are very interested in working within. It could be a new skills development. It could be researching, but researching in the right way, okay? Not just reading a few articles on Facebook or something, or doing a quick internet search. Good research, okay? And you know by now what good research is. So you know that good solid research is from academics, it's from experts, it's from the pioneers in their field, okay? So good solid research. So it's providing opportunities for specialisms, for networking, for new contacts. And most of the registers would say that, you know, CPD can cover a lot of areas. It doesn't by any means always have to be an expense to you. So, you know, reading a book that you've taken from the library, watching some really interesting podcasts or video casts online, you know, undertaking sort of, you know, reasonable online courses and so on. You know, you know, lots of different things can make up this continuing professional development. So, but it also, with it, brings other opportunities for you. So it brings opportunities to specialize, to find out more about a specific approach. It gives you opportunities for networking, to meet up with old colleagues and to make new contacts as well. It in many cases, you know, helps you to meet the experts in their field who are running specialist courses and workshops as well. So there's great opportunities here to really involve yourself within the profession in lots of different ways, all of which would count towards CPD. So, and finally here, CPD recognises that counselling is a continually developing profession. Now, you'll know this from our studies of the pluralistic approach, for example, where we recognise that the pluralistic approach, which is the umbrella approach that we are learning on this course, is a contemporary approach. It's a pretty new approach. So, you know, the people who have formed the pluralistic approach are still working. They are still researching. They are still gathering evidence. They're still observing. They are still being therapists and practitioners. Okay. So, you know, this is a continual development. There are new developments of new theories coming through. There's new ideas. There's new evidences. You know, all of this is good for us to keep up to speed with. So in your module for the class that this lecture is connected to, you will have the opportunity to think about doing your own research and CPD activities, giving you the opportunity to really feel, okay, well, what's important to you? What direction do you want to move in within the next few years? Where do you want your career to go? And it'll be interesting to ask yourself, well, yeah, what's driving that? You know, what's driving that? Is that really coming from that center of you, that sense of self? Is it your will that is really driving that? Okay, so I hope that this has been useful for you, and I hope that it's been informative. And as I mentioned before, if there's anything that you would like to just understand more clearly, then do consult your notes and the references within those notes, and there's something that you can discuss with your tutor while you're in class as well. Thank you so much for listening, and I will hopefully see you again soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.